I'm here today to tell the tale, and I'm happy that none of my other fellow recruits had to go through anything similar.
And look, I got to say, look, this is kind of coppers don't like praising each other. It's a thing, but what you went through was terrible. I want to thank you seriously, and I'm not being ironical, flippant. I genuinely want to thank you for having the courage to tell us what happened to you and the story that the entire ordeal, I suppose, would be the least worst word.
I can give you a snippet today.
I genuinely find this kind of inspirational, and for what it's worth, we were pumping for you through it all, and we're happy that you're still here with us to be able to tell the story. So, mate.
It's the 30th of April 2000, a Sunday afternoon, and I'm where we all like to be on such a sunny, relaxing day. In a beer garden, the Victory Hotel in Brisbane. A friend of mine, Graham, he comes over to me. Hey, Greenie, great afternoon, mate. Why don't you stay out? Take a sickie. And I think, love the party on. Could I get away with it? Say I ate a dodgy kebab and had an upset stomach. But I think further, and as you know, Matt, that camaraderie, being there for your mates is so important. So it only took me a split second to go, my sergeant, Chris, is going to be there. My partner, Chanel, is going to be there. There's no way I can let them down.
Yeah. And
for what I went through, I wouldn't have it any other way that I turned up to work that particular night. But so I turned to Graham, say, love to party on, mate, but there's no way I can let my mates down. I go to work. It's 3 a.m. in the morning, and what comes through is a routine job, death threats. For members of the audience, this is probably a little bit unusual, but for us, it's actually quite a common thing. And they were delivered 6 hours earlier. So the longer between a threat being spoken and then any action taken, the more time that passes, the less likely it is to take place. So there's no emergent threat. So we arrive at this cul-de-sac, Hanbury Street, Chermside West, and we speak to two males in relation to the threats on the driveway. Starts to rain, and then we move up to the veranda and we question them further. My sergeant moves down to the patrol car, and he's doing questioning in relation to the background on the suspect on a mobile phone. My partner, Chanel, we would continue to speak to the two males who called us, and their veracity was quite in question because they seemed like they might have been a little bit on drugs. They were going off from one tangent one moment and another tangent another moment, and really skittish. And one of them turned around and said, "Are you two a couple?" It's like, we were dating. It's like, mate, your life's just been threatened by somebody who's claiming to have a firearm, and you're worried about if my partner and I in a relationship, which we weren't. It was just, so it's like, we've got to make a very careful call on this. So we've got to do our due diligence. And what my partner decided to do, she decided to walk down the front veranda, the steps, and walk over the street to the patrol car where the sergeant is. And she's checking on Chris. And then she moves back to the front yard. And I'm up there with these two males still trying to ascertain what's going on. And one of them, he comes out and he brings something up to my hand and says, "Oh, look at this. This is a listening bug he's planted in the house." What? To me, it looked like a thimble. So this was getting more and more.
Why do you think it's a 504?
That's exactly what we're thinking. It's just like, if you're going to kick somebody's door down in the middle of the night, you want to have very solid grounds. Chanel comes back from the car and she's in the front yard of the house and she waves me down. Being a good partner, just wanted to give me a break from listening to these, literally, 504, which is the police radio code for a mentally ill person. So we walk back to the patrol car, and I've had a lot of what ifs from this particular actions I was about to take next.
Yeah.
Chris is in the driver's seat of the patrol car. He's on a mobile phone. He's doing background checks on the suspect. Chanel and I were standing in the middle of the road. The patrol car's just over here. And she says, I'm going to go and check on these two males on the police radio to find out about their background, to see what we can find about their history, to help build their credibility, or something that might give us some red flags. And where this suspect was located, this person's father was a prominent member of the community. He was a professor in a science specialty, very well respected. And this is why we're doing a due diligence. Your parents, my parents, your house. We don't want police in the middle of the night kicking the door in, guns out, saying, emergency search, looking for a weapon, without having a pretty watertight case. Chanel enters the front seat of the patrol car. She leaves her door open because we're only going to be there a few moments, and she's on the police radio and she's doing background checks on the two males. And I'm standing outside the vehicle, and there's no emergent threat. And, well, I want to be part of this investigation and make sure that I can contribute to it. I'm not going to be one of those persons who stand back and does nothing. And so I had wondered, if I stood there longer, how it might have played out. But what I've chosen is that I approach the rear passenger door of the patrol car. Chanel's door is open. I open the rear passenger door and I sit down and slide across. And just like Chanel, we're only going to be here a few moments. So I decide I'm going to leave this door open. Chris is in the front seat. His door is closed, but the window's down. He's on the mobile phone to the regional duty officer, Inspector Brian Nolan, speaking to him in relation to the job. He was speaking to police communications in relation to the job, and his next move was going to be called the regional duty officer, Inspector Brian Nolan, to try and get his input into this matter, emergent search, or do we get a search warrant?
Yeah.
Chanel on the radio, checking on the two males who called us. So I'm in the middle of the patrol car and listening to the information coming in. The interior lights on, and I've been sat here for about 60 seconds. And all of a sudden, I hear this pat, pat, pat. And what's rushed through my mind is, well, what can that be?
What the hell's that?
The only thing that makes sense is, and as you would understand, is a big thing for police, is dogs. We're going to jobs, and if they, they have a dog, and often, real crooks have vicious dogs. Yeah. But to me, it's just like, it's just this pat, pat, pat. And so I think the logical conclusion, it's 3:50 a.m. in the morning, a quiet suburban cul-de-sac in a good neighbourhood, never been to this street before. Not a problem area for us. And so I'm thinking, that must be a neighbourhood dog that's running out to the patrol car. I was wrong. I turn and look. The interior light's on, and I actually cannot see what is outside the door. But immediately outside the door was a man pointed at my face, was a .22 caliber rifle. Bang, I'm shot in the face. Bang, I'm shot in the arms. My hands are around my mouth. There's blood, there's teeth, there's bones. I try to open the child locks, the door here. The child locks are on. I can't get out. I sit up. Chris's seat is empty. His door is wide open. Chanel is splattered with blood, and she looks completely motionless. I don't know if she's dead or alive. I'm suffering audio exclusion. I cannot hear anything that's going on. Not realising this, to me, it was just dead silence. I draw my firearm, which was a revolver at that time, and I scream, "Get help!" And I go out to the door that I got shot through. So that's how the initial attack took place. And I travel a lot and I speak now, but I just talk with friends and it comes up, well, what do you do now, Granny? Oh, I'm a professional speaker. Oh, what do you speak about? Well, I talk about, being injured in the police and then the years afterwards and the journeys and the good people and the bad people. Well, what happened? Oh, well, somebody ambushed me, shot me in the face, and I got out the car. And then I wanted to confront the gunman. I was, filled with rage. I couldn't find him. Then I went searching for the sergeant, walking down the street. I couldn't find him. And then people started to come out. So I gave them directions to go back in the house. And I come to the car and I didn't know if I was going to find my partner alive or dead. And I hear this, Granny, I'm hurt. Granny, I'm hurt. To me, music to my ears. Charnel had actually been shot 6 times. She was incapacitated from all these rounds. Incredibly, didn't hit a vital organ. But one of her hands was inoperable. She was in extreme pain. And so she's on the radio calling for help and then also explaining her injuries and saying, help VKR, help, And I was able to come back and I had a decision to make, can't locate the gunman, can't find Chris. It's just me. Charnel's incapacitated. And I thought, well, at this time, we had no tactical first aid kits. There's no way I could give it first aid. And I thought the safest thing I can do is to stand guard in case the offender returns. On the bonnet of the patrol car, holding my firearm in my right hand, and Charnel always has a crack about this too, because with our firearms training, you've got 4 rules of safety. And one of those rules I break, and Charnel brings this to my attention when we see each other, and that as I've gone to put my arm on the bonnet of the police car and just to get a little bit of the rest, and that she says, Granny, you broke the laser rule. Yeah, like there's a laser coming out the end of the firearm and it never crosses anything you don't intend to shoot. But I'm thinking, under the circumstances, maybe you could give me just a little leeway. So I had my forearm on the bonnet of the police car. I'm holding my revolver in the right hand because my adrenaline, like I've had a big, boost of adrenaline to keep me going. I haven't felt any pain. It was just rage, and then it was just right. But I did have a thought and think everything's changed because I knew this is serious. I knew I'd been shot. And then I just went into offender, take you on. Oh, can't. Chris, I thought Chris might be lying somewhere wounded in the street. Can't find him. People coming out. Well, there's a gunman. They're unarmed. It's nothing. So I did my best to, shout at them. And this was actually recorded in statements. In the coroner's report, this lady heard somebody out, get back into your houses, and then she heard sirens. Well, that person, and not their finest client service voice, was me. So I've moved back to Charnel, leaning on the bonnet patrol car, holding my firearm in one hand. I've then taken my hand because I'm bleeding like an absolute faucet. And so with my left hand, I put it over my mouth, try to staunch the flow of blood. And I look through the windshield at Charnel, and I say, Char, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. Just trying to calm her down. This was just my reaction at the time. But I think some of our training kicked in, isn't that, if you can stay calm, that means your heart races less, you're not losing as much blood. So that was my point. But Charnel, years later confided in me, and she said, when she was looking at me through that windshield, I'm saying, Greenie, and I'm saying, Char, it'll be all right. She said, Greenie, there's a gunman on the loose. We don't know where our sergeant is, and you're pouring blood from your mouth all over the bonnet of the patrol car.
That's not the most reassuring feature in the world. I got to say, to give her some credit there, bro.
Exactly, and that's exactly what her thoughts was. What happened next was, this is like the longest 5 minutes of my entire life, and I could hear the sirens coming in the distance, and the closest officer was Senior Constable Brett Price. He was the Ferny Grove supervisor. He was on Gympie Road, I believe, with the intersection of Rhodey Road, and he's heard this go out. So he was the closest. He's going, all units were actually sent, code 1 when you listen to the audio. It was initially code 2, then I realised how bad it was. All units, code 1, imminent threat to life. But Paul Brett, there was no GPS in the vehicles. He had no partner. He's had to stop out of frustration, get out the Refidex and look where Hanbury Street was. He's done that, and he's starts to come towards us, and I could hear the sirens getting closer and closer. So I move over to Charnel, and I say, Shah, put the rotating red and blue lights on. I knew that the offender knew where we were. Yeah. And my thought was, well, the people coming to our aid need to know where we are. So she's hit the lights and sirens with her one working hand. Down comes the street, and I can see it. You know, I'm sure there's jobs you've been to, again, be they domestic violence, or be they a sudden death, or be they a suicide or a drowning, images that just don't leave your memory. And this is a great one. Most of us don't like seeing those red and blue flashing lights. It means we're going to get pulled over, maybe get a ticket. To me, it was the sweetest sight of my life. Yeah. Coming down the street, and I was surprised one officer got out the vehicle. And this officer, he didn't follow procedure. Brett Price is a bit of a naughty boy. What did he do? He put his own safety aside. He wanted to get to us as soon as possible. Normally, procedure is stop the vehicle, go to the boot of the vehicle, put on your ballistic vest, put it in the ballistic place, and then head in. And people have questioned me about this, about following procedure, etc. But this was such time critical that, you know, people, you know, there's a gunman on the loose. People, you know, could be bleeding out. And I was certainly bleeding profusely. Charnel was bleeding profusely. Then he's come down the street. He's parked in the middle of the street, probably about 10, 15 metres away. He comes towards me. I move towards him. And he's, you know, and he asked me, where's the gunman? I don't know. And then he moves me over to Charnel. Now, when the car arrived, Charnel tried to get out the vehicle. She's so badly injured, she hasn't been able to draw a firearm. She's actually collapsed in the gutter. So that was the extent of Charnel, and I was extremely worried about her. So Brett's moved me. By this time, I was extremely disorientated. I'd lost so much blood. The pain hadn't yet started to kick in, but I just lost so much. Like the police, one of the police vehicle was just covered in it. And the crime scene photos I have of it, they actually just show the streaks of blood because it rained overnight. But there's like 6 statements of, you know, police and a member of the public who noticed like this police car was just covered in claret. So that was not only the bullets, but losing all that blood had, you know, sapped my energy. So I'm, you know, grateful Brett's there. He got me down on the ground beside the patrol car. He got in the middle, and where Charnel had collapsed on the just outside the door, she stayed there. And he's asked me about the offender. I couldn't advise him, but I've asked about the supervisor. He said we didn't know. We get an ambulance on the way. And the next police vehicle arrived very shortly after, which was our vehicle in our team from Boondall who'd been doing another job. And so Dave Hornby come over, laid down with me and with Brett, helped secure the perimeter. I still had my firearm out. And Kylie Grieber was the other officer. First ambulance arrived, and she was instructed to go to Charnel to support her. Now, I was pretty worried about Charnel. Now, I know Brett directed the ambulance, but I actually waved my arm over to direct them. And that because I never felt, at this stage, I was in a lot of pain. I was bleeding. I didn't feel like I was going to die. But I didn't. Charnel had not been able to get out the vehicle, not been able to, you know, draw a firearm, was, you know, in extreme pain. And so I'm like, well, I don't know how many times she's been shot. I don't know if she's got, you know, she's going to bleed out. So she was the first one evacuated from the scene. The second ambulance parked up the end of the street, and there's myself and the 3 other officers, and they were asking for a corridor of safety. This time now, I'm in extreme pain, lying on the ground with Senior Constable Dave Hornby, who was a former Royal Marine from the UK, and so he'd been to Northern Ireland, and so he was, quite experienced, and he was very calm under pressure. And to his credit, he was comforting me, because I was asking, when's help going to get here? The first ambulance has been there. I can see him up the street, lit up like a Christmas tree. They're asking for a corridor of safety. This is not possible due to the limited police resources and the a gunman on the loose. And it was actually quite dangerous because they were so easily seen, from the offender. So he's calmly reassuring me, and then he's back on the police radio, VKR, we cannot provide a corridor of safety, move the ambulance, up to our location. And finally they did. They drove up, they put me in the rear of the ambulance, drove to the street. Now, what occurred is when Chris got shot, he got shot in the right arm. It was a through and through injury, but this caused him to drop the mobile phone. It had gone out of the window that was left open and landed on the roadway. And that telephone line kept the communication open with police communications. So you actually hear me get out the car, but then I couldn't locate him, but then you hear me walking down the street, and it's recorded 8 times calling out, Chris, Chris, Chris. And then you hear Comco on the other end. He uses, he swears, he uses the S word, then he uses the F word. So this is a sergeant at police communications, and he's just, all of them are feeling helpless. And they actually knew me because between 94 to 96, I worked at Brisbane Police Communications. The lady who took the call from the person who rang us was a friend of mine, and she suffered for years afterwards, thinking, what else could she have done? Yeah. But Megan had done all she could. So there was huge ripple effects of people affected. So it wasn't just the officers being shot; it was the people at comms, especially with that personal connection, who knew me, that I worked with. Then the investigators, then scenes of crimes, and then all the colleagues from the station. And I was very, So Chris, what happened to him was he's dropped that mobile phone. He's been hit in the arm and through and through. He's got out the vehicle. He's looked across, had his firearm out, pointed at the ground. He sees a slim coloured figure, light hair, doesn't know if it's me, doesn't know if it's the offender. He turns and runs across the street. He says, Greenie, if I took the shot and killed the offender, I'd be a hero. If I shot you, I'd be a villain. So that was...
Fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. He couldn't take the chance. So he's turned, run across the street, and what he said to me a few years later was he put his foot on the gutter as he's just got across, and then he's got shot second time. And his thought was, oh, are we being actually sniped at? So that's what he's thinking, that we're actually getting sniped at. He likes to say that he was shot in the back. I don't know about you.
Yeah. He shot me ass.
That's not my background. That's exactly right. And the bullet is still there to this day. It was so close to the nerve, they left that bullet in. So Chris has got 2 bullets in him. He thinks we're being sniped at. So he runs to a chainmail fence. It's 6 foot tall, and now he's got 2 bullets in him, but this is what he's able to do. Now, he didn't follow procedure, but what he did, he took his firearm and he threw it over the fence. He wanted to keep his firearm out, so it was handy. So he didn't holster it, just in this mad moment, threw it over, then with both hands on top, just somersaulted straight over the top. Shows you what you can do under adrenaline. Makes his way to the next street over, Maylard Street, sees a house with a light on, bangs on the door, and the homeowner comes to the door. Chris shouts out, it's the police, I've been shot, let me in. And this guy's thinking, oh, this sounds like BS. He looks through the peephole, he sees a bloke in blue covered in red, opens the door up. Chris gains entry. He sits down in a chair. He says, give me a phone, gets a phone. The homeowner starts to bandage his bleeding arm because he's pouring blood all over the bottom of the carpet. So much blood that the police actually cut up and replaced that piece of carpet. And another interesting story is people's reactions under stress. People react in very different ways.
Absolutely.
So Chris has his gun pointed at the door. He's on the telephone to police communications, calling for backups and asking that, where are my troops? How are my troops? The guy's bandaged the arm, and then the wife comes out. And the wife, she looks at her husband, she looks at Chris, looks back at her husband and says, when you're finished there, don't forget to turn the light out in the kitchen, and goes back to bed.
Okay. I mean, okay. Yes, dear. I mean, what are you going to say that? Yes, dear.
I think I'm overwhelmed by the circumstances. That's what I found. She's just overwhelmed and just gone, oh, what do I normally do? You're working or doing something. Yeah, make sure you turn the light off. So, okay. Yeah, that's so I take. But Chris, when he tells that story, he said he looked up like this, like, are you kidding? You know, there might be some help that you could render.
Okay.
So I've been collected by the ambulance. Charnel's been collected by the first ambulance, and Charnel was in so much pain they took her to the Prince Charles Hospital. And in the vehicle with her is Constable Kylie Griever, who was directed to go to support Charnel. They pull up at the hospital, and out comes a small Asian nurse. And she looks at Charnel and she asks, oh, what's your name and date of birth? And Charnel just screams, just give me something for the pain. And the nurse just repeats, you know, what's your name and date of birth?
Yeah.
And this, I understand this is part of their procedure, but I also think that she was a little bit shocked as well. She's gone back to her training.
Yeah. So what do I do? What do I do? This is what I know how to do. Exactly.
And Kylie said her name is, Charnel Cole. Shah, tell her your date of birth. Tell her your date of birth. So Charnel tells her date of birth, and then she gets treated for her pain. And so for me, I'm in the ambulance. We go to the house where Chris is called from help from. And he was supposed to wait for a police escort to take him from the house into the back of the ambulance, but it was just so chaotic. Nobody was coming. The ambulance was actually at risk because I was unarmed by this stage. It's lit up like a Christmas tree, and Chris says, enough of this, puts the phone down, comes down the front stairs, hops into the back of the ambulance, and he sits across from me and says, Greenie, do you believe this? And like I'm, in shock, and it's just like, oh, no, like this is just, I just said no. It was literally surreal. Like this is something like from a movie.
Yeah.
And the next thing that Chris said is, boy, that's a big needle. At this particular time, the Queensland Ambulance Service was just introducing paramedics, and paramedics had a lot more training and could use much stronger drugs. Yeah. I was in a lot of pain, but Charnel never had a paramedic and had to go to the Prince Charles. This paramedic had a huge needle, injected me. Oh, baby. I would just like take this point in time to thank the Queensland Ambulance Service for the finest hit of drugs I've ever had. Mm. And so I had immediate pain relief, with that. We were all transported to the Royal Brisbane Hospital, Chris, Charnel, myself, and then a massive 3 weeks manhunt commenced for the offender.
Mm. I remember that. Like we were, we were looking up in camps, like we didn't think. Yeah, look, the nightmare, and again, mate, I've just got to commend your courage for obviously the night, but obviously just for sharing this too. I'm thinking that the recovery from the ordeal would have been somewhat challenging.
No, thanks, Matt. I'll try to tell it as succinctly, but as realistically as I can, but so that other people can benefit. If it's not just them, it's somebody else who goes something, you can just realise how long the recovery process is. And so initially I was stunned and dazed. It just hadn't sunk in. It was like, I considered it like, you mean to say somebody's pointed a rifle at my face from less than a metre away, shot me in the head. Surgeon at the Royal Brisbane Hospital said, don't, mate, 2 inches higher, your eyelight, you'd be dead, gone. If it was lower, it could have hit my neck, gone into my spine, paralysed me. If I stayed outside the vehicle, and this is some of the dreams and what if I stayed outside the vehicle, I would have been an easy target for the offender to shoot me in the back of the head. And what really led to a downward spiral. So initially, I was having, I was in intensive care, then out of intensive care, and it was only a week in hospital. And I've come home. I had a tracheotomy, so got this flap here that's open. My mum and dad's place, who were caring for me, and it was just surreal. It hadn't sunk in. I describe it. It's like winning gold lotto, but on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And I started having dreams, and like one morning, my father's coming to wake me, and he, just shook me, and I lashed out, kicking with my feet. And I've since learned from people in the military, one of the techniques they use, if they're going to wake one of their mates, they grab them by the toe because of their experiences and what they might be dreaming about. It's just a very common reaction. And so I was having dreams about that night. I was having dreams about other jobs that I'd been involved in. I had some, close calls. But what really affected me and set me into a downward spiral was 7 weeks after we were shot, Senior Constable Norm Watt of the Rockhampton Dog Squad, he attends a domestic violence incident. And Norm was shot once. The bullet severs his femoral artery.
Yeah. And
pretty much, if the blood flow's not stopped, you have about 4 minutes. Help did not arrive in time for Norm. He bled out. And for me, my subconscious, it's thinking, well, Chris, Charnel and I, we all shot multiple times. Paul Norm was shot once and dies. So I'm suffering some survivor guilt, why am I alive? And then really the full fury of post-traumatic stress disorder hit me. I'd already had the dreams, but now it was, depression. I'd had anxiety in the hospital about the gunman coming back, but sexual dysfunction, hyperarousal, still to this day. I was talking to my dad yesterday, and I told him, I can accept this now, but I had my phone in the bathroom leaned up against the wall. I had an audio book playing, and I'm just, shaving in the mirror. Well, the phone slipped down and made a bang on the kitchen bench, and I've jumped, and I just, was able to calm down. And I know that's a side effect of the shooting that's still with me to this day. But it took a long time to get to that point of acceptance. It was about 10 years. I had 2 rounds of reconstruction surgery of my face, and that was incredibly painful, far more pain that I went through with the reconstruction than I did actually on the night of the shooting. And so when that was kicking off, well, mate, what did they do?
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. I mean, to me, there's so many amazing things about this incredible story. Obviously, it's just like every copper's worst nightmare. The powerlessness, because there's nothing, seriously, there is nothing, zilch, zero, day, nada, nix that you can do about that. Like you're sitting there, and some guy just makes a decision. You're doing everything you're supposed to do. You ticked all the boxes. You're doing everything. You're doing your checks. Someone decides that they're going to bounce you. Well, that's it. There's serious nothing you can do about that. So the sense of anger, powerlessness, all that kind of stuff. And of course, the what ifs. You would, there's no job anyone has ever walked away from that you've thought, oh, I did that perfectly. You just couldn't have done better. Like even really small jobs where nothing serious goes wrong, you still go, if I had said that, if I had been standing there, the what ifs. And of course, what makes it worse is, that if you've used force on someone else or you're going to be held accountable, you're going to have all these people saying, well, you should have, you could have, you would have. If you had been standing there, that's just part of being held accountable. Like, that that's going to happen as well. So, mate, that just must have been an absolute nightmare. And then you're kind of finding that you're sliding downhill with that.